Mister.
Hey everyone, Miss Dempsey here. This is a guide for round 10 of the Nations Cup with the Alpine VGT Gran Turismo. Let's get this started. Once you start to turn in, you will start to trail brake. Do not use too much braking, as you'll need to try to stick as close to the inside as you can. Once you're facing away from the grandstand that was on the right, that's when you can start to fully accelerate. Take these S's at full throttle and just make sure you don't hit the start of the curbs, as that can get your car unsettled. Then for this turn, you want to look for the official stand that is on the right, as you will start to trail brake after you pass them. Do not use all of your braking, just trail brake for a short while, and then when your car is facing away from the billboards that is on the right, that is when you can start to fully accelerate and go for a late apex on that turn. Then you will start to brake right after you pass the third line that is on the left and go for a very late apex. Straighten the car out, as there's a dip right around here, and if you accelerate too early, it will unsettle your car and you can potentially spin out. Brake as you turn into this turn, and you can shift down to first gear to get the car to rotate a bit more, then go into second gear. Take this turn flat out, and the moment you start to turn left over here, just ease off on the throttle. Try to stick to the inside. Use a tiny bit of braking if needed. You can then start to fully accelerate right before you pass the start of the flags that is on the left. Then for this next hairpin, you want to look for the yellow area that is on the tarmac. Right when it starts, that is where you start to brake. Brake hard in a straight line. Once you turn in, then you start to trail brake, try to stick to the inside, and slowly start to accelerate. In this car, you can go into second gear as soon as you start to fully accelerate to try to keep the car stable. Right when the writing on the tarmac ends, you can then start to brake. Once again, try to go for a late apex. You will take this right-hander at full throttle, but right when the curb ends, you will need to start to brake. Brake heavily for a moment, then take advantage of this left-handed curb right here, get the car to rotate, and then start to fully accelerate. Brake right before you pass the 50-meter mark, go for a late apex, and right before the curb on the right ends, that is when you can start to fully accelerate, and you are good to go. Let's go ahead and talk about the strategies. Now, before I talk about the actual race strategy, I just want to quickly touch base on the qualifying strategy, and that is just to be very nice and careful on your tires when you're on your out lap. Don't use your out lap as a qualifying lap, because you'll get just enough tire wear for it to make a noticeable difference in your qualifying time. So just drive nice and carefully. Don't stress out your tires too much on your out lap. That way you have the tire grip you need for your actual qualifying lap. I go into a bit more detail in my manufacturer video for the last race that took place at this same exact track, so I'll leave that in the card up above. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the actual race strategy. Okay, since you can use any car from the Group 1 class, this is where it gets interesting. So in this practice race, I was using the Alpine VGT Gran Turismo just kind of to maintain consistency. But our friend Mr. Pigums over here, say hello to him, he was using the Toyota TS050, and this is where it gets interesting, because while the TS050 might not be the meta car in the time trials, it definitely has some relevance when you're doing the actual race. After I talk about the strategies, I'll mention about how the tire wear is on this car versus the TS050, just for comparison. But when it comes to the pit strategies, it will be possible to do a 1 or a 2-stop strategy depending on what you're trying to go for. So for example, in the first strategy, like how I started this race with, I started with medium tires in the front, hard tires in the rear, just to get the tire requirement out of the way from the get-go. Then I pit at the end of lap 5 and lap 10, and fuel's not an issue, all you need to worry about are the tires. Now with the second strategy, you can basically do the same thing as the first one, except you're starting with only one set of tires, right? But depending on the car you're using and how much it wears its tires, you can potentially pit at lap 6 instead and then lap 12 later on. By doing that, as long as your tire wear is pretty good, you'll be spending less time with the racing hard tires, so your overall time won't be affected so much. Now, the reason why I actually mentioned that is because the tire wear on the Alpine Vision Gran Turismo is noticeably different compared to the TS050. So let's go ahead and actually compare how the tire wear is on both cars. And as you see here, his tires are doing a lot better than mine. So this was at the end of lap 5. I'm following my strategy, so I'm going to the pit stop. And in a moment, you'll see how my tires are doing. And yeah, it's a very noticeable difference. His tires are obviously doing a lot better than mine. So because of my tire wear in the Alpine Vision Gran Turismo, I definitely have to go with a 2-stop strategy. Because if I go with a 1-stop strategy, I'm only going to end up having a bad day. And part of that, the tire wear, seems to be because his car is a lot lighter than my car, because my car feels like I'm driving a mountain. But this thing is pretty fast. So it's something that you should think about. But if you want a car that's a bit more lenient on the tire wear, think about using the TS050. And to further compare them, this car, the Alpine Vision Gran Turismo, is really fast. So it has a pretty high top speed. So like in the first and second sectors, and even part of the third sector, it will do fantastic there. But the tire wear and then like the tighter turns, that's where its downfall comes through. Whereas with the TS050, it's a hybrid, so you can definitely fly off of the low speed turns because the battery will be kicking in. But the top speed, it's not really there, but you do get some good tire wear. And last but not least, there's the third strategy where you only start on racing medium tires. Then at the end of lap 7 or 8, depending on your tire wear, that's when you change over to racing hard tires to get the requirement done. And again, it's going to depend on the car you're using and how much it wears its tires. Because if I were to do it on the Alpine Vision Gran Turismo, that's definitely not going to end up going well for me. But if you're on the TS050, that can potentially work since it's a bit lighter on its tire wear. And one last thing I want to mention, since we're on Group 1 cars, whenever you're behind someone, you want to be a bit more careful, because once you start to brake and start to turn, you're not going to get all the air coming through because you're right behind someone. So you won't be getting as much downforce, and that's going to make your car a bit more understeery. And because of that, you're going to end up scrubbing your tires a bit more, which will, of course, wear your tires a bit more. So that's something you want to be careful of. And if you do end up behind someone, then you want to think about going for a 2-stop strategy, unless if you can somehow get past them, end up in front of the pack. That way you don't have to worry so much about scrubbing your tires due to the loss of downforce, because, well, you're in front of the pack, you have it. But anyways, that is all for the guide. Hope you found it useful. Non-commentary version is coming up, but this is Mr. MCA wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.